Hey English 126, I am doing a screencast this week because I'm introducing your next paper and there's something a little bit weird about it. So I wanted to just go over what we've got going on this week and then this next paper. This isn't published quite yet, so you can't actually see it, but we have the week 9 overview, which is where you'll find this lecture. You're going to have the week 9 readings, and there's a lot of readings due this week. There are things from chapter 26, 27, and chapter 31. And 31 is all about theme. Chapter 27 is about figures of speech, and chapter 26 is all about imagery. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off, but I did not. And so that's what we've got going on this week as far as readings. In addition to that, you have a discussion. The discussion this week is slightly different. It's the same basic idea. You have some stuff that you need to answer based on the poems that you've read. And I want you to read all those poems and then select 2 of the following 3 options. There are 3 options, but you only need to choose 2. And then answer all the associated questions for each. Make sure you clearly state which options you are discussing in your answers. And you're only answering questions this week. You don't have to respond to a peer. So this week it's all on you. You don't have to wait for anybody. So make sure you check out these 3 options and choose the 2 that work best for you. And that's due, as always, Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. And last, but certainly not least, we have this paper. And as you go down to the week 9 module, it looks a little weird. It's paper number 3. But really, this is going to be a combination of papers number 3 and number 4. Because I didn't want to try and squish 2 papers out of these next couple of weeks. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this one paper and have 2 different assignments with it. So this first part is what you're going to be working with. For the next 2 weeks. The paper is actually going to be due on March 15th, which is 2 weeks from Sunday. So this is what it looks like. Oh, it's making me drag the little cloud and over into the other little cloud. But yours should look like this. It should have, and you can choose to download it. If you download it, you just, go over here and do download. I'm sure you've all figured this out by now. And I'm going to go through this paper because I just want it to be very clear what my expectations are. I found that by going through it in this way, I'm often able to field many questions. But if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. So I'm going to read this and then make commentary through it. This is English 126. It's our major paper, and the topic is innocence, ignorance, and/or illumination. One frequent subject examined in literature and the humanities involves various rites of passage through which a person grows in some way and passes from one level of maturity to a higher level. Often these experiences can be reflected upon as bittersweet experiences of youth, which may or may not have been apparent at the time. They may also be seen as deviations from the good life, where a decision or choice has disastrous consequences. As readers, we gain insight from the telling of the experiences and realization. Essentially, literature can enable readers to see their lives and times more clearly. It can enlighten readers and help them to understand their own experiences and the experiences of others. The nature of literature often fluctuates as writers approach such experiences from various perspectives that reflect social trends or literary perspectives. In her article, How Do You Know It's Good?, Mariah Manis states that good literature can be identified by standards of purpose and craftsmanship, which help the audience make associations of an essential order within and between the greater realities of life. In other words, somehow we expect the artist's observations to make sense outside the text. As readers, we view these choices and consequences and relate them to our own growth and development, past, present, or future. So the task. For this assignment, you must write a well-organized academic paper, approximately 4 to 7 pages in length, to critically discuss how this aspect of choice and consequence plays a role in the expression of theme in one or more of the specific literary works. In your discussion, you may wish to approach the work from one or more of the perspectives of literary critical theories that have been discussed in class or in our texts. And I want to be very clear that you are welcome to use a critical literary perspective that we haven't covered. We can have an entire class just on literary theory, and we will never cover all of the theories. We've gone over many of the big ones, but there are still many, many more out there. You could also choose to discuss how the work voices the hopes, fears, desires, lives, etc. of individuals or social groups. And that's a really interesting angle to look at some of these specific works. Another option might be to discuss elements of plot. You've practiced this so many times in this class. You're very good at it. Uses of symbols, techniques of language, details of characterization, etc., etc., to express the topic of choice and consequence as the main theme or to point toward the main theme. Many other possibilities present themselves. See what you find interesting and explain your interest. And I'm going to stop here because I just want to make it clear that this paper assignment isn't super prescriptive. I'm not saying you must write about this one thing. I'm saying that I'm giving you some parameters, and what you choose to do with those parameters are wild and varied and huge, and you can do nearly anything that really interests you within those parameters. Going back on script here, your purpose for writing is to present a critical analysis of the work or works you choose, and you can choose more than one work. You're to be based on any critical approach of your choosing as long as you support your interpretation with specific examples from the actual work. If you wish to impose standards of good literature, you need to make sure you identify any such criteria, and that's really difficult. People have been fighting about this for centuries. You should not assume that your readers embrace your critical standards. You may assume certain truths to be generally accepted, such as the need for the character to behave consistently throughout the story, but some views may not be so widely accepted. For example, some people may not agree with the view that a parent should be perceptive of a child's emotional trauma. Essentially, you want your audience to accept your views, so you need to explain any criteria you use, which may not be generally accepted by greater society. And as a hint here, very few criteria are generally accepted by greater society, so you're going to have to spend some time explaining your criteria. Since this is a classic research style paper, the discussion should be based on your own understanding, interpretation, and analysis. Now, that is not to say research doesn't come into this, because it does. You're going to have to look up critical theories, and you're going to have to look up different elements and criteria if that applies. You may refer to other sources if you wish, but these sources should not form the central basis for discussion. If you do include outside research in your paper, the sources should be documented and included in a works cited page, and you have to use some specific short stories or poems, and you're going to definitely need to cite those. You may wish to use these sources to confirm your own interpretation, but the source content should not be the basis for your interpretation. For example, you may wish to include other critical perspectives and then discuss a different view which you yourself prefer, that's an interesting way, an interesting take on it. You can assume your audience is intelligent and familiar with the content of our course. Thus, you do not have to summarize nor repeat details of circumstance. In your paper, you should focus the discussion on your analysis and understanding rather than filling space by quoting segments or paraphrasing long sections of action or dialogue. You just don't need to do that for this. You should use specific examples from the literary items, but you should provide concise examples, then explain why you feel they are significant and why you use them to support your views. If you expect your readers to supply their own interpretations, they will not necessarily arrive at the same destination which you expect. And that's just a common human element. You can say something and expect someone just in an everyday conversation to come to the same conclusion as you. Like I could say to someone, "Did you see Sister Wives last night?" And my, conclusion might be that I think that the Sister Wives are crazy, but the person I'm talking to might really find that the Sister Wives are this great, fantastic, wonderful thing. I apologize, I just watched Sister Wives. Reading assignments for the major paper. Your paper's discussion should focus on content from at least one of the following, but remember that you can do more than one. You will note that we have not read these for class, so you will need to do some additional reading. I've included links, hyperlinks for all the readings. The first is The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. It's one of the great poems of our time. The first time you read it, you may wonder why. It is one of the greatest poems of our time. Take this paper to explain that. This is definitely a, he's going through a thing, so you need to figure that out. The second, Coming by Yeats, another great poem of our time. And A Far Cry from Africa by Derek Walcott. He is in turmoil, trapped between two worlds, literally and figuratively. Short fiction, these are all newer pieces, newer classics, and you're not going to find a lot of research, or, you won't find these on Shmoop or Cliff's Notes or anything like that. So you're going to need to figure these out for yourself. Vacation by Sherman Alexie. These are different. It's a different kind of short story. The Second Bakery Attack. This is a short story which actually haunts me to this day. A Tiny Feast, another one which actually still very much haunts me to this day. Painted Ocean, Painted Ship. Especially Heinous, 272 Views of Law and Order SVU. This is an interesting one to take on. The way that this short story is constructed is very much more like a list, but it has some greater things to say. And Brownies by ZZ Packer. What to turn in. This is all due March 15th, and this is what you're going to be turning in. Your final draft of 4 to 7 pages in perfect MLA format. A 1-page double-spaced letter explaining the revisions you've made from first to final draft and why you made them. And I want to be very, very clear. This is a 1-page double-spaced, full 1 page. You take up the whole page. Not 3/4 of a page, not half of a page, a full big fat page. And confirmation of an online Writing Center visit. And for that, you need to visit the Writing Center and submit them a draft. So you need to do this early. They take between 24 and 72 hours to get back to you. And you have to turn in their feedback. I want to see that. So when you click on this link, you'll go over to the Writing Center, and it'll say Writing Center Online Tutoring right here, about halfway down. So you can do this all online, and then you'll sign up for a session. And this goes through the whole process. Logging in, you're going to use your student ID. The password is eTutoring and student. You're going to walk through the process and submit your draft. When you submit your final paper, you need to submit confirmation, what they wrote back to you, their feedback of your paper. So you need to submit your draft well in advance of the final. If you have any questions as you go through this, please let me know. Remember that this paper is part 1 of a 2-part assignment. You have 2 weeks for this, so start formulating it now. Next week, in week 10, you are going to share with the entire class what you're doing for your paper. So you need to be able to pull it together and write a synopsis of what you're doing and where you're going with this. So make sure to have that ready for next week. Don't think that you can start this, the night before it's due. You can't do that. If you have any questions for this week, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I hope that you have a great week 9.